Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Pow, and today I'm doing week 12 of my 2021 reads. This week I read quite a few good books and a couple that didn't work for me, including a DNF. I do have timestamps and content warnings in the description box down below. First, I finished Persepolis and Persepolis 2 by Marjane Satrapi. These are graphic novel memoirs about Satrapi growing up in Iran during the time of revolution when basically the people overthrew the leader and then later sort of Islamic fundamentalists took over. So this is really interesting. I had seen the movie kind of cartoon adaptation of the first book years ago, really liked it, and had been meaning to go and read the first book as well as the second book, which was not covered in the movie. So I read the first book and it was just as good as the movie. It was so good. Basically, this is a really powerful look at a little girl growing up in a society that is fairly liberal when she's a young child and then gets very conservative and very religious and enters into war as she becomes slightly older, 10, 11, 12. It's about her family really struggling with kind of how do you deal with these political upheavals, but also wanting to speak out. There's a lot of violence in this, and it is graphic as well in this graphic novel. Tons of content warnings for the series, so definitely look below if you're interested in that. But I thought that this was really fascinating, just talking about the politics, but very much from a personal, individual experience type of perspective. I thought this was excellent. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The second volume in this, the second book is quite different. So it takes place immediately after the first one. The first one ends when Marjane is about 14 and her parents send her to Vienna. They want her to get out of Iran because it's getting very dangerous for girls. So she goes to Vienna on her own. And what follows is the next decade or so of her life spent first in Vienna and then back in Iran as she is growing into adulthood and dealing with a lot of isolation, a lot of depression, suicidal thoughts. She was really struggling, a lot of drug addiction. And this story is much more about her coming of age and being very angry at kind of the world around her. I think that if you're looking for a coming of age story of somebody dealing with depression, this is it. But I was really looking for that kind of glimpse into Iranian politics and life and culture, and that was less so the focus of these books. There was just a lot of emotional angst that was throughout this entire volume, and that really is not something that I connected with. I was very frustrated as she constantly made very poor life decisions, so it was just very hard for me to read this one. I did not connect to it and I didn't get much out of it, especially compared to the first volume. So this one I gave 2.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. This is a new release SFF novella that takes place in Ghana and follows a little girl who one day finds a seed that is perhaps from aliens that affects her such that she now has the power to bring death to everyone around her. And that's very much an interesting way for her to grow up. And we follow her as she travels through the country and deals with a lot of interactions with people who mainly fear her. This is a really interesting novella. I wasn't sure what to expect. I'd heard kind of interesting things from other people's reviews, but I ended up really enjoying this. It's a very quiet novella following the girl Sankofa as she goes through. It's a little bit episodic in that we see her interact with different people or come against different situations, but there's also an overarching sense of the isolation of being different and of being separated from your home, and a lot of really interesting themes in this. I think that Okorafor probably is using this in a little bit more of a literary sense, where a lot of what's happening to the main character while there is a plot line is more of a metaphor for some things in real life, but I don't know that I'm quite able to tease out what exactly she meant by it. So I didn't 100% understand everything, but I thought that the writing was beautiful and it was very engaging and atmospheric, and I liked what I could understand of what the story was saying. So I actually ended up really liking this, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I finished That Kind of Guy by Talia Hibbert, which is the 3rd book in the Ravenswood series. This book follows Ray, who is in her 40s, and she goes through kind of a nasty divorce and moves to a small town to really find herself and develop herself as a separate person and recover from some of those issues of a bad divorce. While she's in this town, she makes friends with a group of really wonderful people who we have met in the previous books in this series, one of whom is Zach. And Zach is about 15 years younger than her and kind of a playboy around town, but they form a really good friendship where they kind of just look forward to chatting with each other each day, and it's built slowly over the course of a year or so. And we come in at the point where Ray is struggling because she has to go to a convention. She is an author, and her previous husband was an author, and she's kind of stressed out about this and doesn't want to be seen as this, pathetic divorced woman who has no personality outside of being the wife of her husband. So Zach agrees to be her fake date. And things ensue from there. I think one of the cool things about this story is that Zach is somebody who is a people pleaser. He's someone who felt very isolated as a kid. He was very nerdy, and then he sort of developed and became very masculine, and everybody wanted him, and he wanted to please everybody. And so he became a playboy more out of a sense of, this is how I get people to like me, rather than because that's his personality. And he discovers as an adult that he's actually demisexual, which is somebody who doesn't enjoy sex just for sex's sake. It's more somebody who feels attraction and sexual desire based on very, very deep emotional connection. And so he's sort of going through this realization and trying to discover himself as Ray is trying to discover herself separate from her previous marriage. And they come together, and sometimes the issues that they're working through kind of clash with each other. It is definitely a sweet book. It's got a lot of really wonderful scenes between them, very steamy sex. I say that this one has a little bit less humor than some of Talia Hibbert's other books, but it has just a lot of heart and was a really good read, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I finished this week was A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. This is a middle grade fantasy about a 14-year-old baker's apprentice who has magic. And in her city, a lot of people have magic. That's a common thing in this world, but they're rare. And a lot of the people who have magic have a very specific affinity or type of magic. And for her, it's bread. She's very much able to work with bread, and she can do things like convince bread that it wants to not be stale, or that it wants to bake correctly, or animate little gingerbread men so that they can dance, these sorts of little things. She is a small person in a very large town, and one day she discovers a dead body in the basement of their bakery, and that leads to a lot of things going down, including, as a lot of magic people around the city start disappearing, her fearing for her life and trying to find out what is going on. I really liked the way that T. Kingfisher writes. She has great just cuteness and humor in her writing style, and really wonderful world building. I loved the way that the magic worked in here, but I also really liked the way that the story developed. The story starts very much on a personal, kind of smaller level, but gets bigger as we go forward and talks about some pretty big themes. A lot of really interesting ideas about responsibility and about governments and about heroism, and a lot of really cool things. So although this book had a couple of little hiccups in the beginning where things were maybe a little slow in certain parts, or I wasn't 100% sure if I agreed with the characters' actions, the second half of this book was amazing. Sush read this to me out loud, and we actually finished the entire second half of the book in one day, which is quite a lot to read out loud in one day, but we were so gripped by it. It was just thoroughly engaging. The stakes were very high. The action was awesome with just really great magic in it, and the themes were so great. I loved the discussions that Kingfisher was having in this book. I felt that they were just really well done. So I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. If you like middle grade fantasy or just fantasy in general, I definitely recommend picking this one up. In addition to the books that I finished this week, I did DNF one book, which was The Four Profound Weaves by R.B. Lemberg. This is a 2020 SFF novella that I actually was really looking forward to. I'd heard great things about this. And I think that perhaps at a different point, it really could have worked for me. But right now, I've mentioned before, my mind is kind of in a weird state and I'm struggling with things that are more abstract. And this one is definitely that. So I got through about 51%, and then my loan was due and I had to return it to the library, and I just don't feel like I'm gonna recheck it out and finish it. So it's a DNF, but not because it's necessarily a bad book at all, I just am not in the mood. So this is a book that is very atmospheric, it's very beautifully written, takes place in the desert, follows some queer characters, focuses a lot on sort of trans identity and on really finding yourself in your community, but also on the desires that we have for knowledge that could hurt us, some other really interesting topics. I liked the themes in this. I liked the identities that were explored, that representation, but it all kind of just washed over me and I wasn't really able to grab onto anything. So even though this is a novella, it took me 3 weeks to get through 51% because I just kept picking it up for a few minutes at a time, and then I just would stop reading and wouldn't really feel in the mood to pick it up again for a while. So just did not mesh with me right now. If this makes the shortlist for the Hugos, I might just try picking it up from the beginning again and see if in a different mood it works for me. But as it is right now, I just don't think I'm gonna check it out again of my own volition. Okay, so that's everything that I read and DNF'd this week. If you guys have read any of these, if you have any thoughts, any recommendations, anything at all, just go ahead, leave me a comment down below.